I'd like to read for you a section from Guided by Future Thinking. This is part 5, Power Without Performance. We live in a moment where many women hold more agency than ever before. The ability to control reproduction, to choose partnership, to generate income, to relocate, to exit. This is historically significant. But agency alone is not maturity. Power without discipline does not disappear. It distorts. It becomes performance when used for visibility rather than responsibility. It becomes extraction when used for validation rather than reciprocity. It becomes chaos when exercised without self-regulation. I have told rooms of women, you are the most powerful women the world has ever seen. What will you do with that power? The question is not rhetorical. For years, we have analyzed power structurally, patriarchy, capitalism, hierarchy, but structural awareness does not exempt us from personal responsibility. There is another layer, how we wield power in our own relationships. When women stop performing power and begin practicing it, dynamics shift. Practice is the right word. We practice yoga, we practice mindfulness, we practice love. Mastery is not declared, it is maintained. To practice power is to regulate it, to know when to assert, when to withdraw, when to pause, when to expect more. I once heard a phrase that unsettled me: save the world, love a man. Another version: love is women's work. Perhaps there is truth there, but at what cost? Love without boundaries becomes depletion. Devotion without discernment becomes self-erasure. As women mature, self-sacrifice becomes harder to romanticize. Not because love diminishes, but because clarity increases. Boundaries are not walls, they are calibrations. They protect energy so that connection does not become exhaustion. And men, they are not to be erased or vilified. They are to be held to maturity. Expectation is not punishment. Accountability is not cruelty. Power that is immature becomes manipulative, reactive, or performative. Power that is contained becomes creative. Each relationship, new or old, is a site of practice. A new way to communicate, a new way to pause before reacting, a new way to ask instead of assuming. Before entering an interaction, I often ask, what am I building here? Am I here to extract, to validate, to dominate, or to contribute? This is not about winning, it is about alignment. Power without self-awareness destabilizes systems. Power with discipline reorganizes them. For me, this chapter means exactly what the title says, power without performance, right? How am I performing power? I may go on a date and make the assumption that a gentleman should pay for my meal, but that's performative power. For me, it is having a conversation. So a recent date that I went on, he paid for the first drink, and I thanked him. Thank you for paying for this. I did not make assumptions. And the second drink, I said, I think it's my turn, right? And he said, if you want, right? A bit hesitant, a bit surprised. But me being the older woman in this dynamic, he understood that me saying I'm going to pay for this one was me holding on to my power. It wasn't performative. It was equality. It was me stating that I can pay for my drink, that I can pay for this, and I can pay for you as well, and that your money, your power is not going to be able to manipulate me into performing normal masculine and feminine roles.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Súbete el pantalón, de la mini, hello.
The tarot cards that go with this: Strength and Queen of Swords. Strength card. Power does not roar, it regulates. It knows when to hold, it knows when to speak, it knows when to leave. Boundaries are not barriers, they are calibrations. Clarity is an act of care. I'm clear, I have clarity on the roles that I want men to play into my life. And if one shows up and is able to take on a greater role, cheers. But my expectations of where they stand right now are clear. One of my favorite parts about writing this book series was how little the books actually had to do with men, with relationships, right? So often that we get together with our girlfriends and we're talking a lot about men and our relationships and, what they're doing for us, what they're not doing for us. And for me to write this was to really get out my thoughts and feelings that are universal, that bypass masculine and feminine traits. But I had to write that one section because I live in a female-dominated world, and I love that, right? Like, my world is very matriarchal, and I have to miss having conversations with people who think differently than me. Unfortunately, I think I'm around people where we're all drinking the same Kool-Aid. But when I do have interactions with men specifically that are very different than me, I love that. I thrive off that. I want to have those engaging conversations and to push them, not to be mean to them. I hate when people project and say, I think you secretly hate men. No, I want men to do better, right? I want men to thrive as women are thriving. I want men to feel as though they can be anything that they want to be, right? I live in a world where I can work towards anything, and it's socially acceptable for me to be alone, to get married, to have kids, to not have kids, to write a book, to become a doctor, to cry, to be angry. And unfortunately, men have not been given that same permission to participate in femininity the same way that I'm able to participate in masculinity. I often feel as though I am a balance between femininity and masculinity, that I can be dominant, that I can be soft. And I often wish that men felt they could perform in those ways. And they do perform in those ways, right? Men are certainly emotional and can be unstable, but it's not seen as something that is a balance or participating in all of the emotions. It is seen as being masculine, maybe a negative way, a scary way. Just as women, if they're seen as too emotional, it is something that they can't control, right? I think all of us, in us, we have a range of emotions that we should be able to tap into, and it shouldn't be perceived as masculine or feminine, and it shouldn't be perceived as in control or out of control. Anytime that I express my emotions, it is an opportunity for me to move past them, to incorporate them in my line of thinking, and to use them to my benefit, where I'm going to gain a different perspective and then move on.
Am I going to be in it over here?
You're not, but we can pan around if you have some thoughts.
Oh yeah, later if you want.
Yeah, if you want. If you want to be in it. So the next section of Guided by Future Thinking that I'd love to read is Consent as Infrastructure. So part 6. Consent is often reduced to a single domain. It is not. Consent is infrastructure. It is the mechanism through which power moves without coercion. When attention is treated as something to be taken, relationships fracture. When emotional intensity is assumed to be welcome, connection erodes. When urgency overrides readiness, trust dissolves. Asking becomes radical. Can I ask you a question? Can I share something personal? Are you open to hearing this right now? These are not polite formalities. They are structural stabilizers. Attention is not infinite. Emotional bandwidth is not guaranteed. Readiness matters. When we stop assuming access to someone's time, energy, agreement, or empathy, the quality of our interaction changes. Conversations deepen. Resentment decreases. Power equalizes. Consent scales. It shapes how we speak, how we teach, how we organize, how we design systems. It prevents dumping. It interrupts manipulation. It creates pause where reaction would otherwise dominate. And it begins simply by asking. So my thought behind this passage was, so often when we think of consent, we think of it in a romantic sense. So can I kiss you? Can I take you on a date? Do you want to be my boyfriend? But I think consent should live everywhere. I think it should live when I'm having a hard day and I call up my best friend and say, hey, I've had a hard day. Can I share this with you? Or have you also had a hard day and maybe I need to seek refuge somewhere else? I want permission. I want readiness, right? So part of what I say here, when urgency overrides readiness, trust dissolves. So I've had to slow a lot of friends down when they come to me or if I ask them, what are you doing this weekend, for instance, and they go, they're so excited. They're like, I want to do this and this and this and this and this. And then by the time Friday comes, it's set in the space that they actually have, right? The energy that they actually have. And I think consent helps us slow down. So do you have plans this weekend? Can we brainstorm, but not necessarily set anything in stone and see how we feel? And sometimes that may not meet somebody's needs, right? They may feel, no, I want you to commit to something because I don't want some flaky situation. But that's when you gauge, the type of friendships and relationships that you have. Mm-hmm. So I think it goes in line with what we were talking about.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder too, because sometimes you jump right into it, especially with a good friend, without asking, like, hey, do you have the capacity to listen to me dump my day on you? Or your romantic partner, certainly I could ask more often, like, can I just dump this on you? Like, especially sharing outcomes of your day.
And I think one part that I could add to this is prompting people in the reaction that I want them to have. And sometimes that can maybe come out manipulative, but if you ask it, right? Like, I am going to share with you a tough interaction that I'm having with a coworker, for example. I'm not looking for solutions. I'm just looking for you to say, dang, that sucks. Right?
Yeah.
And I think people appreciate that. I think people are like, whew, all right.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Thank you for letting me know what you need and not me trying to guess or assume. But then that's when consent comes from their side, right? Okay, I will hear your dumping, but do you want me to just listen? Do you want a hug? Do you want to talk some shit. Like, what do you want? Oh, there's sister. Ember!